Hey guys, thank y'all for tuning in today. I'm Dennis Whitehurst with Drill Right, and we have a special guest with us today, Mr. Greg Horn with Huxted. And we're at the No Dig show in Denver, and he just gave his, it was a presentation about the JRX project yesterday, and it was phenomenal. It was standing room only, and it was him along with a couple other guys, but they explained the entire project because it was a record bore. We've got Greg with us today, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his career, where he come from, how he got to where he's at, and tell us about this great project that they accomplished. Greg, tell us a little bit about what brought you into this industry. Tell us what you do. Tell us whatever you can think of. Give us your backstory, where you started,
Sure.
where you went to school.
Sure. It's kind of interesting. I grew up in northern Michigan, in Traverse City, Michigan. We don't have a lot of auto plants up there, but we do have a lot of auto part manufacturers up there, building wire harnesses, a lot of injection molding. So when I went to school, I wanted to stay at home, and so I actually went to get a degree in auto part manufacturing. And that's what I ended up getting my degree in. But while I was doing that, we learned drafting. And then that was about the time when everybody was switching from drafting on a drafting board with a T-square
Right.
and a triangle, moving to CAD in AutoCAD. Back in those days, you actually had to type in commands, draw a circle, draw a line from this point to that point. And so I was able to get a couple classes in that, and it just really stuck with me and impressed a couple of my instructors at the time. And a local business in town, Environmental Crossings it was called, had just started. They wanted to get in the directional drilling world. Phil Andrus was the owner, and he had a geophysical exploration company, and we had the Niagara Reef up in northern Michigan. They had a lot of natural gas and oil production, and so he had done quite well with his company and grew his company doing that. And that was starting to die down. They had already found most of their oil and gas. And so he wanted to get into something new and had heard about this directional drilling. And from his exploration and his contacts with oil and gas, he knew of some pipeline companies and knew of some people. And so they started thinking about drilling underneath some of the rivers up there to install a pipeline.
About what time?
This
what
was
time
probably
frame?
about 1991.
Okay.
1991. And HDD had already kicked off.
Now, to give y'all a little reference here, Greg is a little bit older than me because in 91, that's the year I graduated high school.
I'm 1982.
So yes.
1982.
So you was already on your career in a good way.
Well, actually, I was just starting it there because I had my wife. We'll backtrack a little bit. My wife and I got married at 21 and moved out here to Denver, of all things, and just loaded things in her car and moved out here. Just didn't have a job, didn't have a place to live. Parents thought we were crazy and just thought that's what we needed to do. And so then we lived and survived, got a job, got transferred up to Cheyenne, Wyoming, lived there for a year, and then just missed Michigan and decided to go back. So that's when we decided to put my wife through college first. We had both wanted to go to college. And so we put her through college at Western Michigan, and I was working 2 or 3 jobs at the time to do that. And then after she got her profession going, I decided to go back to school. So I was kind of already late 20s, early 30s when I went back to start taking these college classes. And so then I was in these AutoCAD classes, and this company, Environmental Crossings, they needed somebody to do their first as-built. They had gone out and rented a drill rig, rented a crew, basically, Phil had, and needed somebody to present the as-built, didn't know how to draw it. And so they came to class and asked if there was any kind of volunteers, anybody that wanted to take a shot at it. And being gullible and always interested in learning new things, I said, sure, why not? And so I went in and it did my first as-built, and it was on computer. And it was very, very interesting. Didn't really know what we were doing.
Tell us about the very first one. Was it harder than you expected?
It was, because nobody at that time really knew what they wanted. The owners didn't really know what they were to expect at the time.
And you damn sure didn't know what they wanted.
I didn't know. I didn't really have many examples of it. I knew the joints at the time were 30-foot long steel joints. It'd probably be important to show where each one of those were. We had an XYZ data sheet that told us where the joints were that you printed out on the old dot matrix printers, and took that information and just plugged numbers in and started to add anything I could in the drawing, that a telephone pole that was 30 foot off the entry or something like that the field guys had written down some notes.
That are automatically on there today because of people like you and people that have made those plans a lot easier now.
I believe so.
So you had to put everything in there, like
everything that I could find, and just to make it easier so the lines could be located.
Right.
Nobody was using GPS. Nobody, Northings and Eastings, lat longs, things like that were definitely around and being used, but not in our type of application or anything. It was just strictly land surveying and doing that.
I remember I started drilling in the early 90s, and I remember the first sets of plans that we got back then.
Yeah.
I mean, and I see the plans now, they're so much more elaborate, and, things are laid out and, like, well explained. Back then, you was having a hard time. I mean, you had to go and every job was different. One job, this meant one thing, and next job, it meant something else.
Exactly. Maybe one. And I will say the first couple were out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily in a public right-of-way going down Main Street.
Well, I guess that's good for you at that time.
Exactly. You didn't have to worry about the right-of-ways or existing utilities usually. I mean, they were just kind of out there, but we still had to somehow let people know where that line was. And so it was some trial and errors, and it was a successful job. And so he decided to get into purchasing a rig and hiring a crew, and just kind of kept me along to continue doing a couple of those and maybe a drawing for a submittal to try to get a job that this is something we can do, and basically learned how to design a directional drill with your entry tangents and radii and bottom tangents and things. And he also owned this geophysical company that was still doing work, so they were able to keep me employed. In the meantime, when drawings weren't needed for the HDD aspect of it, I got to go out and blow dynamite up with the geophysical company.
Was that fun?
It was a blast. Probably the best job I ever had. Yeah, no pun intended.
My dad was on a blasting crew when he worked in the coal mines.
Really?
Yeah, they would go in and drill the holes and put dynamite in and then blast it, and then they'd pick the dynamite.
Yeah,
pick the coal up.
I just loved it.
Yeah.
And I got kind of the bug of, we'd go out on the road. I remember we were doing a job down in North Carolina at a nuclear facility, and they were looking for a new spot to bury some waste. So they were doing seismic to make sure there was no faults in the ground there or anything. And they wanted to teach me how dangerous that dynamite could be. And so instead of putting it down hole and setting off the charge on a kind of a rainy day when we couldn't shoot seismic, one of the guys went out. We thought we were well in the clear of everything, and strapped a couple sticks around a tree just so we could see what it would do, and let that go. And before you knew it, all the sirens were going off at the nuclear plant, and that's a whole nother aspect to it.
So what did it do to the tree?
Well, the tree's not there anymore. The tree's not there anymore. And so I was able to stay busy doing that. And then it got to the point where we started picking up enough business on the HDD side where it came for me to make a choice on which kind of path I wanted to go with. And I decided that I'd pretty much like to stick with this HDD. I like the drawing aspect, but I kind of like being in the field also.
So you found your niche at that point in life. You found what you enjoyed.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I wasn't sure how long I wanted to do it. And I
think that's key. I think regardless of what makes the best money, if you're not enjoying what you do, it's always going to be a bad job for you.
And so then they were generous enough to want to get me experience in the field also. So they sent me out in the field. I was doing that for about 4 or 5 years, traveling the country, doing these jobs for them, doing project management, or started out mixing mud, working the tool joints. You
learned real quick you didn't want to keep doing that mixing mud part, too.
You got that right. And I just kept learning new tasks. Yeah. And it was kind of course, me being the young college kid at the time, the hazing, I guess you'd call it today, that went through and stuff. I definitely went through my hoops, but the bug kind of caught me at traveling. I got to see an awful lot of the country and really enjoyed it. And so between between what was happening there, I just really started thinking this could be it. And one day Phil comes in and he asked me if I know how to survey. And I had no idea how to do a land survey. And back then we'd send out a tripod and, it was before you had data recorders and you'd still write everything down on paper. But luckily in school, I was pretty good with trig and I won't pass up an opportunity. So of course I told him, yes, I know how to survey. And that was on a Thursday, and I think he was sending me out to survey my first job on a Monday. And so I quickly went to the public library and found everything I could to refresh my memory on my trig and any land surveying, and went out and tried to prove that I knew what I was doing.
Right.
Even to find the entry locations and exit locations off of some monuments.
Well, and a good thing, you're obviously a pioneer of this industry. And the good thing about it, there wasn't a lot of people that would know if you was doing it the wrong way.
There's a lot of truth to that too.
That's not such a bad thing.
You bet. Then it got to be where I was young. I kind of had the bug of being on the road. It was fun. You got to go to the bars at night.
Oh yeah.
You worked hard. You definitely put in your days. You
played hard,
but there was some fun to it.
Yeah.
And you once in a while will get a day off or something and get to go see something that you hadn't seen before, that you might never have seen before. And there were many times where I'd be traveling from Oregon, driving to Florida, or heading up to Maine, or wherever it might be, places I've never thought I'd be.
That's one thing I regret a little bit. I've traveled the whole time that I've been in the industry, and I've seen everywhere. I mean, I've been to every state except Alaska and Hawaii, and I know all the good spots to go to, and I've seen a lot of them, but I never took the time to go explore, go visit, go see, because I was always working or, headed to a job. And I've told the guys that work with us now, when you're there, take the time to go do what you're seeing, because you'll regret it later.
Even if you shut down at noon or something like that, just don't go back to the hotel room and decide you're going to take a nap and watch Oprah or something like that. There's always something.
So I admire you that you actually took the time to visit the things and go see the things.
Yeah, the big downfall of that is now I've seen them and my wife hasn't.
Well,
and
now you got to go back and see them again.
So
but at least you eliminated the bad spots. See?
Well, that's true. That's true. Now we can be watching a show on TV or something. I'll say, oh, I've been there.
Yeah.
And I'm always getting a little tap on the shoulder there, a little love tap saying, I haven't. And so that carried on. So I ended up getting that bug and deciding to do it after I was on the road for 4 or 5 years. A lot, only home 4 or 5 weeks, and it started to put some strain on the marriage.
Oh, yeah.
It's tough being gone that often. And when you get home, my wife would want to go out to eat or want to go do something, and I just had been in hotels and been eating in restaurants, and God, I just love some meatloaf and to sleep in my own bed. And so it finally got to the point where I was able to, after I'd learned what I could in the field 4 or 5 years, it was time for me to start applying my skills and things like that in the office. And so then luckily they decided.
Be home a little more.
Yeah, and still did some traveling.
Right.
I did a lot of job pre-bids, going looking at sites. Can we set up here? What can we do here? What can't we do here? And so that was always kind of an interesting task, but I was home a lot more, and that was the more important thing. And so then it just kept growing. They liked what I did. I always had an aptitude for it, and so they'd start having me do some writing for them. I was pretty good with technical writing, trying to convey what we were doing. Back then, submittals weren't anything like they are now. Even I'm now talking the early 2000s and things, but things have evolved quite a bit. And so between the writing and they decided to get me into the bidding, which really helped me an awful lot also.
Did you enjoy bidding?
No. At first, I kind of did, but no, I'm not. I did bidding for 10, 15 years, and probably the last 10 was very reluctantly because nobody else would
and
wanted to, and they tell me I was good at it, But I don't know if that's really was the case or if it was just because no one else really wanted to.
And bidding's a challenge. It's
To
a
do
huge
it. It was.
challenge.
And it really started eating away kind of at the gut. I was always afraid everything I was doing was wrong. It really hurt the ego a little bit that you don't get a job and trying to think, what did I do wrong? I have to do it. And so during that time, doing the engineering work, I tried to spend more of my time on that and just helping out on the bidding side. And then it got to the point, in the early 2000 or 2010s, 2012 or so, that I had to start bidding full time. And that really wasn't my cup of tea. And so
I don't think people realize the ups and downs of being a bidder, because when you work hard and long hours and spend a lot of time to try to figure out where you can shave a few numbers here, a few numbers there. It's all about getting in so you can have a competitive bid, and you work your tail end off, and then you lose the bid. You lose $1 million bid by $10,000. You're like, man, surely I could have shaved.
Yeah, what did I do wrong? And at the time also, it meant because we were getting so many opportunities, the industry was growing so much that as soon as you'd get done with one and lose it, I could be depressed about it that day, but tomorrow I had another bid due.
Right.
So you had to jump right back into it.
Same thing in sales, exact same thing.
Yeah, and so I got to just start concentrating more on just the engineering side.
Yep.
And that I love. Looking at new jobs, getting plans in, looking at what could we do with this? Some plans that come in are actually designed quite well, that they fit what a horizontal drill would look like.
Right.
Others that come in, not so much. They have a lot of hiccups in them. And over the years, they've gotten better. But, back in the early 2000s, HDD was still new for a lot of engineering firms. And it was difficult to come up with those that could come up with a viable solution to a lot of these crossings. And so that was always intriguing to me. And I was lucky enough to we had done some very unique jobs. We started to do some underwater exits for the fiber boom in the early 2000s.
Yep.
That we drilled from land, a pilot hole drilling out offshore, popping up under the ocean floor, and leaving our drill pipe in the ground to use as a conduit. Sending divers down, getting our steering tools off, bringing that up.
There used to be a lot of that drill and leave years ago. It was a lot more. There's still a little bit now, but it got really big there for a while.
And at the time, this is still environmental crossings, and we probably did more, 90% of all the crossings on the east and west coast. So I was always on a beach. That was always beneficial.
Yeah.
It's always at the end of a parking lot or at the end of a street that you're entering the beach, and so you got to be in a lot of neat places. And so doing those things, I had the opportunity of coming across a lot of engineers in this business that had no problem helping me along. Brian Dorwart or Dennis Doherty, with some of these underground engineering firms that just specialize in HDD or microtunnel. And they never once frowned on me or tried to ridicule things I was doing. They'd always offer suggestions and, hey, this looks pretty good, but let's, look at this a little different. So I appreciate all the educational opportunities I got for free.
Oh, yeah.
Basically from them, learning from the older guys in the industry and what they might be doing. And now I think it's kind of time to
Well, what I think
around.
separates you, we've dealt with a lot of engineers through the years. But what I think separates you from a lot of the engineers out there is you understand directional drilling. You've had that boots on the ground time. You've been on the bores with these guys, and you know what can happen and what can't take place. I mean, there's certain sizes of places that you got to be able to set up a rig, and for you to be able to know what can and can't take place out there from an engineering standpoint, it eliminates a lot of things that have to be fixed once the job starts,
And even going back to the things like the estimating comes into it, trying to figure out how many ream passes you want to make on a certain hole, and starting to study maybe the cubic feet per foot that you're removing from that hole. What are your limits? What can this mud recycling system produce and still give you a good product? Are you going too fast? Are you going too slow? And being a little anal, I always used to like to keep spreadsheets on that. and keep track of that, and thinking someday down the road this is going to be beneficial. We could be drilling underneath the same river or underneath the same street in the same area down the road, and what were our production rates and how were those things. So I always tried to keep track of that stuff and use it as a knowledgeable base of what we might expect if we were bidding that again.
Do you think we'll ever get to the point that, competitors will start sharing that information with each other and form a big database?
I've really wondered that, geotech especially.
Yes.
I've often wished, and we've tried it internally, that there is a large public database of geotech, like there are with other NOAA maps and things like that, that I don't know how it would happen, but there's so many bores taken out there for a project that might not have anything to do with yours.
Yes.
Excuse me. It might be a project that was done 10 years ago, building a bridge, but they did
say the same thing.
pouring things on some foundations. Yep. And there's some states that are coming along. New Jersey's one that I'm thinking off the top of my head, that their state geological information center does have some relative data posted to where you can get on a map and you can look at this area, and maybe they did put a bridge in there or something, and you can access some of their geotech, because that's one of the most important things we need is geotech. And it's a costly endeavor. And it's amazing to me how many owners don't want to spend that money up front. And it's getting better, but throughout the years, so many owners would not want to spend that money up front and have you do it as a risk.
Right.
And I'm not sure if I'm drilling 50 foot underneath something, if I'm going to hit soft sand, if I'm going to hit some sort of a competent rock that might need change tooling, things like that. And so I've always thought a public database would be an excellent source, and we've tried internally to keep our own.
Right.
And
I feel like that there's a lot of companies like Huxted that keeps a lot of data, and you can use it for your personal gain, but if at some point, and I know that's what, it helps you keep an edge on your competition too, because you've got that information that somebody else doesn't.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if we'll ever get to 5, 10, 20 years down the road to where we're like, hey, it's common knowledge on a lot of this, but we've all got great data. Can we share it and make this industry better? And, it's kind of like sharing a mud technique. You know, you don't want to give away your secret to your competitor, but would it make the industry better as a whole?
And I think it would. And maybe the industry has to take the lead in that and decide that they want to start trying to do that. I'm not sure how eager people would be to share that information. A lot of it's proprietary, that they wouldn't, but there's got to be some mechanism out there for us all to share that information to make it easier down the road. It'd just be safer for everybody and a lot better for HDD projects if we all knew what was going on underneath.
So let's fast forward. Hey, where did you come in line with Huxted?
Environmental Crossings was our original name. The original owner that had the seismic company, he retired in 2010.
Okay.
And we had picked up a partner, Bruce Brasher, down in Houston to run our operations side of it and to do our bidding. I was working bidding under him out of our Houston office, because that's the mecca of horizontal directional drilling is down there. And we were up in Traverse City, Michigan. That's just because where we started. We never had a drill rig up there, but all of our administrative offices were up there. And so when Phil decided to retire and Bruce took over the company down in Houston, they really wanted me to move down there. And I love my snow. I love winters. I love the 4 seasons. I don't like Houston heat. It's
pretty rough.
It's too hot for me in the winter down there, and I don't think so. And luckily enough, at that time they had enough confidence in me and wanted me around that they were willing to do kind of like a remote office, like it's popular today to do things like that.
We call it work from home now.
Work from home, but I was able to do that. I was one of the first to probably start doing it, and back then it was just everything over the phone. You wanted to share information, maybe you'd fax it back and forth, and then emails came along. Even thinking back to when we were talking earlier, when you'd go to do a bid, you'd have to send away for the plans.
Yeah.
And send them $50, $100,
Yeah.
and you'd get a FedEx tube, and you'd get the plans, and then it was time to send a bid out, and you'd either be faxing it and hoping it got through, looking for a read receipt on the fax that it was delivered, or you'd have to have it FedEx to them on a certain day and things. And now everything's by email. Most of the meetings I'm on are Teams meetings or Zoom meetings, whether it be new meetings with engineers, owners, or just internally.
Right.
And nowadays we can even set up meetings where I can be drawing something on the computer and sharing it with the whole conference room down in Houston in Conroe, and where their office is, and they can all watch what I'm doing, and we can discuss that, look at PDF drawings and things, and it's amazing what's technology has brought to the business.
Well, you guys do phenomenal work, obviously, everywhere, all over the country. Everywhere you guys are working, you're, having success. And it goes back to the backbone of your having good engineers, having good people out in the field. But then you guys aren't afraid to step up and take the risk on some of the jobs that a lot of people aren't doing. And, the JRX was one of these jobs.
Yeah.
And tell me what, when you got handed that job and said, what do you think? Tell me about that.
That was kind of a unique situation because it was a design build project, and luckily we started. Let me finish first. Go back a little bit to our name with
Okay.
Huxted. Now we were Environmental Crossings, and then Bruce decided to start settling down, started going into semi-retirement. And so Northeast Remsco out of New Jersey, they own a tunneling division up there in New Jersey.
Right.
And Caldwell Marine, a marine division. And they had Huxted Tunneling down in Florida. And they decided to go into the HDD business. And Bruce, we had contacts and worked with them in the past. And they decided to, it's a family-owned business, and they came in and bought us. And so then we switched our name to ECI Drilling.
Right. That's
Instead of Environmental Crossings. And then after a few years, probably just 2 or 3 years ago, we decided to combine the Florida Huxted Tunneling and the ECI into one unit. The Florida team moved to Texas also, and that's when we switched our name to Huxted Tunneling. And so I like to say I was still the first employee of ECI, and it really hurt. The first couple of times I even had to start putting a Huxted logo on a drawing,
Right.
or type in, and my email stayed the same with ECI, or I'd answer the phone, Environmental Crossings, and it took me a while to
so you've
be able to
been
make the
with them
switch.
for how many years?
34.
Wow.
34
That's amazing.
since basically with the same company, I like to say. And I've seen a lot of people, we've spawned a lot of other drillers and other people in the country that have worked for us to begin with. Some have come back. Some have gone on to do other things. There's other companies that I can say that, I knew him when he was a driller for us.
Right.
And he might own his own company now, things like that.
So we get on, you guys do massive jobs, okay?
Yeah.
You guys take on the impossibles a lot. And one of these impossibles was the JRX project. And there was a lot of doubt in the industry that it would even be able to be done. I heard a lot about it a year before.
Yeah.
That no, they're probably not going to do that. That's an impossible shot.
Yeah.
And nobody would give you, a big chance of making this
Internally
happen.
also.
And you as an engineer, when that got handed to you and said, Greg, what do you think? Tell me about that day.
It actually kind of transpired down in some meetings that we had. We knew of this large project going on, and through our reputation, we were contacted by Garney Construction, and they were forming a team with some engineer companies, Dewberry Engineering and Brierly and Associates. And I had good relationships with Brierly throughout the years, and they knew some of our work. And we'd always tried to do challenging projects.
Right.
It gets boring doing the same thing day in and day out.
I agree.
There are things that you like to do just to see if you can do. So, we've done some pretty crazy things that we'll talk about later across the country. But on this particular one, they contacted us because they were putting a team together. And there's only 3, 4 companies probably in the country that were set up or had the equipment that could do something like this. And at the time, it was basically just a 4,500 foot drill, about a 4,000 to 4,500 foot drill from a working platform.
Which which still would have been a world record.
Well, I don't know about a world record, but it would have been pushing the limits of the HDD, and we would have had to build 2 working platforms because the object of the whole JRX project was to get a pipeline from the North Shore in Newport News down to the South Shore of the James River.
Right,
and they knew that underneath the channel. The channel that runs through there where a lot of the Navy ships come through and things, they could not trench it in there. They needed, for future dredging or things like that, they needed to drill it. And so they were looking at links on where they could figure out the links. And the original proposal came up with wanting to drill from a working platform to another working platform just on each side of the channel. And it was going to be about 4,500 foot. And it was still going to be on the outstretches of what an HDPE pipe could be.
Right.
And we looked at it, and they wanted us to become part of the team. And so at that time, okay, we're going to jump on this team. We're going to be doing some bidding. We'll have some consulting going on. We'll see what we can turn this into. And so the meeting started down in Virginia Beach. Every other month or so, we'd all get together for a week and throw ideas around how we could do this better for HRSD. What are some other options? And they ended up HRSD decided there'd be 3 companies bidding it, and you had to qualify to be one of those 3 companies. So it was another few months of getting our submittals together, our beautiful package that Garney had put together to try to sell our services to them to allow us to even bid on the job. And luckily we were shortlisted as one of the 3 teams that could complete this, and we kind of gave it that JRX name. There's some other competitors of ours that are in the industry that each had a kind of a different name for it.
Right.
And we had to go in front of JRX and start selling our ideas. Well, one of the things that we had thought about is on the north end where our entry area was on land, the platform, there's a business there that does work on maritime boats, a lot of Navy vessels, and he needs his docks. That business comes in and out of there all the time for repairs. The platform would have obstructed all that work for him. We would have had to shut down his
which would have hurt him in a bad way.
Oh, yeah. It would have been a couple years of him just basically being shut down with this platform out there where the big ships need to turn around and be able to come into berth. And there was also right next door, there was some fuel delivery things that were happening, and so they couldn't have that blocked. But that was the main idea. And so we started kicking around the idea of going farther. Well, once this is done, the 2 platforms, you're still going to have to get from the platform closest to the north and still do some trenching up under a bulkhead, get it up on land to where it's going to be, and that's going to be slowing down his business even once we get the drill done. So we started looking at different product materials. We started thinking steel, maybe let's drill from the shore out to the one barge, and we started thinking about using steel. Well, they didn't want steel for this wastewater project. And we started thinking of other items. You could use PVC that might have a little better tensile strength than HDPE, but they didn't want that in their system. They've always done some HDPE products. And unfortunately, we had already done about 15 HRSD projects in our career working for them. So we kind of had a reputation with them. So during one of these meetings that we had on what's going to be our edge? How can we present this to them to make us a little bit better? One of the guys just asked, could you guys drill 5,700 foot from here to here? And I knew we could drill it, but the object was, would the HDPE actually come back
Stay
through?
together, yeah.
So now I was getting a little nervous.
With these jobs, there comes a lot of risk. And the reason there's so much risk a lot of times is not that, the impossible can't be done, but you're going to have a lot of money, millions of dollars tied up before you ever even get to start pulling the pipe to see if it's going to come in.
Oh, very much so.
So, I mean, it is it's not just, oh, well, we might or we might not get it. I mean, this is a multi-million-dollar risk on this. And the fact that your company got behind you on this and got behind your guys on this is just amazing to me, because it's not like somebody taking a risk and they're on $10,000. I mean, they're taking a risk on millions of dollars. So they put all their trust in you guys.
And one of the unique, and it wasn't just internally with Jag and with Huxted and with our crews. It was even with the team members, with Garney and Seaward Marine that we were working with, and Brierly and Associates on this job, because there was a unique feature in the bid specs that the pipe had to be debeaded on the inside the whole way across. We could not have any blow-off valves. You couldn't have any internal beads. So that means you couldn't start trenching from one end of the river over and trenching or doing the drill on the other side and connecting them. You'd have that internal bead in the center. It had to be started. They decided to start with the drill. The drill had to be completed, or else they couldn't even complete the other 4 miles to get to the south side of the river.
Right.
And so it was the most important aspect of the project, and it all relied on the drill. If the drill didn't make it, our company would be out millions. The only option would be to re-drill and to spend all that money again. There really wasn't another option, a viable solution to do it until the job was completed. So
and this thing became, how many feet long did it end up being?
5,700 foot.
5,700 foot.
50, actually, let's not get too exaggerated here. I think it was 5,670.
Okay.
But close enough for me to call it 5,700 foot.
And that's a long bore for anybody that hasn't been out there. That is a long bore.
It's over a mile.
And what was the diameter?
They originally wanted about a 54-inch pipe, and to get the flow that they were hoping for through the pipe. But the issue was we couldn't find HDPE manufacturers that were even willing to make it that large. We were able to get some 42-inch DR11 pipe that would be the best we could use for this drill, that they were actually able to produce and confidently keep the minimum ID to what it needed to be, not have any fluctuation in that. So we went with a 42-inch, 5,700-foot-long drill, and the crew that we had thought that I was crazy, but what the heck, let's give it a shot. They're still getting paid, but let's give it a shot. And so the project kicked off, and we needed to intersect on this project, intersect your drills. We were afraid that if we drilled down and tried to do what we call a build and come back up with our steering tool, we'd end up in the soft material, wouldn't be able to get the build we needed, and would miss our target on either side. So then when you're looking at a drill, you decide to put in casing, maybe on the water side, you always have to add in a casing to act as a column for the drill fluid in the cuttings to come up so you're not disposing in the water. So we knew we needed casing on the exit side. And in order to get the reamers through it, to have it for the full entirety of the drill, we'd need to make it large enough so it was going to turn out to be a 66-inch casing, which is quite large for HDD drilling.
Yes, it is.
And from the platform side, we were still going to be in 40 feet of water, probably. The water column was there. And then we had to get down through a lot of this soft material to get down to something stable so we could get a bite on the earth and start doing some actual drilling. So that turned out to be a 600-foot casing installation, which is, I don't know if it's a world record, but it's an extremely long piece of casing in the industry. I don't know of any other that's been that long.
That diameter, too.
In that diameter, and to keep it straight, because you got to worry about the geometry of your drill. And you can't put a steel casing in around your vertical radii because it won't bend the same way your drill steel will or the pipe, your HDPE pipe will. You need to be able to just use it on your entry and exit tangents. So that also made us keep the pipe low. So we got the 600 foot of casing on the exit. And we knew we wouldn't be able to just drill from land and hit that 66-inch target, 5,700 foot out. That's a very tough task to do, and it might take a lot of poking and backing up and poking again. And so we got with Brown Line. Gyro.
So you knew at that point it had to be intersected.
That's what we were thinking, and so we got with Brownline, one of the leaders in gyro steering, and talked to them about intersects, what we can do about accomplishing this, and they were behind it 100%. Let's just start the pilots from both sides. We'll drill down somewhere in the middle. We'll hook together. We'll get the drill bits aligned with each other. We'll retract one back to land as we're pushing the other one back up through that same hole that we just met. There won't be any resistance there, so we'll be able to kind of follow that and come back up inside the casing.
You know, I see these all the time now, but they still amaze me every time I see one when they come out bit to bit.
Yeah.
It is pretty amazing.
It is, and when it's a pretty big accomplishment. And again, I remember the day that I got the picture that it was up.
Yeah,
and it's quite the picture.
Yeah, it's amazing. That in itself is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's just the first leg of the whole project.
Right.
I mean, now we've got a pilot hole. So then we're working on the marine and the river, and this is going to be construction started in March, I believe, and so you've still got bad weather. And whenever you're doing marine work on the platform, you need lots of marine support. We needed to have barges out there to take care of our cuttings, hopper barges for us to dump the cuttings in after they went through the recycling system. We needed fresh water. We couldn't use the river water, it was brackish. That doesn't mix well with the drilling fluid, so we needed fresh water available. So they had separate barges with frac tanks with fresh water. All the daily fuel supplies, all the daily consumables that you're using, the more drilling mud you need.
Right.
Daily, you're limited on this 200-foot by 90-foot platform, which is a small working area for this large of a project. And so you can't have everything out there all at once. It's got to be brought to you when you do need it.
Right.
And so that was a huge accomplishment in itself, just keeping track of all that logistics. And we started reaming, and we had gotten a hold of Drill Right to talk to us about the mud program. We really liked the things that they offered. And
I remember that, and I remember we had to get on a call because, and I don't even remember who I was talking to, and it was whether they were going to use one kind of bentonite versus another, and use one additive versus another. Sure. And it was a pretty heavy discussion, and it was we presented what we thought was the best plan, and it was it wasn't easily accepted at that time, but looking back on that, I knew when you guys approached us with this project, I knew we wanted our name on it.
Sure.
We all talked, and we was like, you know what, this is the project that is something we really want to put our name on, because there wasn't a lot of positivity about whether this board was going to make it or not.
Yeah, I mean, even for your reputation, it doesn't go. Are people going to start blaming the mud?
Well, they always blame the mud.
That's true also.
But we the day y'all called us and said, okay, you guys got the job.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, at our place, it was like, okay, let's get this together. Let's make this happen.
Yeah.
And we're going to do whatever it takes. We're going to make sure this is done right. And we appreciate the opportunity to even be a part of this project.
Yeah, part of the team.
Part of the team, yeah. It was a great team to work with. But continue on where you was at on that. But that's where we come into play at that point.
We realized that the hole is in this material is we kept getting larger and larger in the durations that your hole is going to be open. I mean, we're going up to a 54-inch reamed hole, which is quite large.
Yes.
And you need a good cake wall. You need the good mud properties in there. We knew that the pulling of this pipe coming back through the drilling fluid was going to have to be, the drilling fluid was going to need to be at a low mud weight. The higher the mud weight, the thicker the mud was, the more resistance it would put on it, and we couldn't have that. So there were a lot of stipulations we had put on Drill Right on what we needed the mud to be, a 9.5 mud weight. And we knew that besides some of the technical things that we were looking at, the mud program was going to make or break this job. It was really going to be one of the things that allowed us to keep that hole open. There were going to be times where we might be shut down with weather for 2 days, 3 days, where you can't get out to the barge because of sea state. Are we going to be able to keep that hole open? Is the hole going to start collapsing?
Yeah.
And that's where I think you guys came in and gave us the best program that we could have helped or could have hoped for. And I think it really helped the project.
You guys cooperating with everything too, because it takes a lot of time to do a bottoms up at the end of the days. And you guys were, anytime there needed to be a bottoms up, you guys were, hey, if we need to run this for 2 hours and circulate 3 hours, whatever it takes, you're like, we're not going to compromise this bore to save a couple hours time here.
We also knew going into it that if we had any release of drilling fluid to the surface with all this soft material just bleeding out of the hole and floating up to the river, if we ended up getting what we call an IR, an inadvertent return, it's going to cost us in a couple ways. Number one, the hole's not getting cleaned as well as it should. We're losing mud to the surface. The environmental impacts that are going to happen, the amount of money and resources that are going to have to be employed into cleanup and keeping that river clean. And so mud was just going to be an important part of this job, and keeping the pressures low even on the pilot holes. Getting back to that intersect was another good example of using the intersect, because the farther out you go with one drill, all the pressure's coming out of the head, and it's got to come all the way back to the rig. So by cutting that in half, you're basically cutting your possibility of a frack out, of a inadvertent return in half, which is beneficial. And luckily, we didn't have any leakage to the surface, and we were able to contain all the mud in the hole so we could keep it clean. But that was another good thing that we thought we did, is first of all, we were going to start with a larger reamer size to start doing it. But after we did the pilot hole, a 12-inch pilot hole, we wanted just to create more flow. I wanted to be able to get those cuttings coming back, so we decided to go to just an 18-inch ream, just to open that hole a little bit more, give you more of an annulus, and allow that to happen. And what it also allowed us to do is we had strict guidelines that every 600, 700, 800 foot, we'd stop, and as you had just mentioned, we'd pump a bottoms up. We'd make sure that that mud was circulating, that the tests were coming back accurately, and then we'd go. It took a little extra time to do it at that particular moment, but it sure did help over the long run of that drill.
Well, and I think that's one thing that in our industry people don't look at enough is nobody wants to talk about what an IR costs a company.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that we struggle with, is going, you put these type of fluids in place that will help minimize IRs.
Yeah.
And sometimes in this case, make it zero. But by doing that, it saves so much money, and days upon days it saves on a project.
Oh, it easily can. And everybody wants to, you've got the mindset that the best way to make money is to turn this estimated 40-day project into 30 days.
Right.
Hey, and then we're making 10 more days of profit and all that money that we had put in the bid. But all of a sudden on the 28th day, you find out maybe you're going a little too fast, and something did happen, as in a mud release to the surface of crack out. Then you've got the cleanup. Then you've got to worry about what to do with the hole as it is currently, and you can open up a whole new book of...
Job gets shut down. And you're paying all these guys to sit around and wait.
Exactly. I've always looked at it as making sure that you have a good conditioned hole is one of the most important things you can do on an HDD besides the geometry.
And we didn't pay Greg one nickel to say that.
No, not one. That I think was one of the big successful parts of this project. We stepped up our reaming passes. We also chose that after each one of our reaming passes, getting larger and larger, that we'd run a swab run through there. We didn't usually... a lot of times on drills, you'll just add the larger reamer. You'll run that through. You will then put on the next size reamer, run that one through. And at the end, you might run a swab through there before you pull the pipe in, just to make sure the driller feels the hole is good and stable, and that he's not going to run into any obstructions or anything like that. But we thought it was very important to spend the extra time, as we just discussed, preventive maintenance possibly, to
That's exactly what it is, preventative maintenance.
yeah, to just run a swab through there of each size after each one of our ream passes, just to make sure that hole was clean and that we were able to get all the cuttings out and just keep the fluid flowing throughout the hole. We were lucky enough during some weather shutdowns that a couple times we were already. We like to put the reamer on the land side to open that hole up larger there and
Right.
bring it out to
Bring most of your
the
flow
water.
to the
Most
to
of
the
the
land
fluid's
side.
going to flow back up the least path of resistance, which is the larger hole. So by doing that, in forecasting of the weather, if we knew we were going to have a couple bad days of weather coming this weekend, we might be able to adjust what we're doing to make sure we're in one of these reaming passes where we don't need our our support barges out on the platform that might need to be brought into safe harbor for safety. But the platform, we're sitting about 12 foot above. We don't have to worry about sea state or anything on the working platform. We can run the drill
Right.
rig. We just don't have our support auxiliary items out there on barges. So we were able to plan on that a little bit too and make sure that we were able to work as much as we could. There were a couple instances where we could not.
Yep.
We did have to shut down completely for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, weather got bad there.
We try to go out and spin the drill pipe from land just to make sure that things were still moving out there. But luckily that we didn't have as much bad weather as what we had kind of anticipated and put into the bid. And I think that helped out quite a bit also. We were able to keep moving. We also went from a single shift operation on the pilot hole and switched over to a 24-hour operation during the reaming process, just to keep that mud flowing the whole time. A lot of times in the industry, you might take Sundays off and you leave that hole set from Saturday at 7. You're working 12 hours, 7 to 7. You might leave that hole set from 7 o'clock on a Saturday till 7 Monday morning. But we didn't feel that was possible on this job.
Right.
We wanted to keep things going, so we had 24-hour operation the full time.
And I think doing that was one of your key things that led to the success of this job as well.
I do too. And we could go over a list of, everything. There's so many different things
Right.
that happened that could be a key part of the success of this job, that it was one of those nice things that everything just came together.
Right.
And knock on wood, it all seemed to work.
It did. And, one thing I noticed from the outside looking in on you guys, when you guys decided to take this bore, you really didn't skimp on anything. Like, I remember the day before we were starting, we had a meeting there, and, you guys were having everything delivered for that job. And, I mean, you went all out to make sure you had the best chance of being successful on this job.
And I think the whole team on that, also bringing you and Brownline into that meeting, a kickoff meeting, but for the year ahead of time before that, with Garney and with Seaward Marine, what happens here if we can't get barges out? What is our plan B? What is our plan C? Let's say we can't get any contingency plan that might come
Right.
up. We spent more time on this job on contingency plans and lining things up, coordination, than I have on any other project. And everybody came together, and it was that team effort that really
And you
made this
guys,
project work.
Not to just toot you guys' horn, but it's true. Working with you guys have a great team in the field.
Very
Oscar
much.
and Benny and all their support guys, man, you just have phenomenal people out there in the
Top
field.
notch.
And it's like you guys have put together just a great team all the way around. And everybody likes working with them and working for them, and
Yeah.
as do our guys. Our guys enjoy working with them a lot.
And that was another key point, is having you guys on site the whole time. You guys supplied us people on the platform, on land. You were taking all your readings. We were sharing that with our team members, with Brierly and Associates,
Right.
so they could see the mud properties. Did they have any suggestions? Did you guys have any suggestions? We're never set in our mind that we're the only ones who know what's right and this is what needs to happen. You always have to keep your mind open for suggestions on what you might not use it, but it's always good to listen to what other people have to say.
That job, it went good, and we were keeping up with the mud reports every day, watching it, and we was talking with the mud engineers the whole time.
Sure.
And let's fast forward to pipe pull.
Yeah.
We get the hole reamed.
Yeah.
Everything's ready. And now I tell everybody, pipe pull day, it doesn't matter if you're pulling back a conduit this big or in this case a 54-inch 42-inch
Yeah.
line 5,700 feet long. Pipe pull day, everybody out there, it's like it's go time.
It's
you
go.
know, and the pressure's on, the anxiety's there. Everybody's like, okay, and everybody's looking at us on the mud side. They're like, okay, boys, let's see how good it is, because I promise you, if anything goes wrong, the first one that gets blamed is
Sure.
the mud.
Sure.
And tell me how that felt that day, because I was watching you during the day, and I know you was excited. And you just tell me your thoughts that day, because it was almost in my aspect, in my perspective, it was almost scary because everything was going too good as planned. And pipe pull day is always when the pressure hits. Tell me about that day with you.
Yeah, it was quite exciting. We knew we had to start early. We wanted as much daylight as we could. I want to say it was about 5 o'clock in the morning that they started towing the pipe across the river. And that entailed a whole nother logistics nightmare, getting 5,700 foot of pipe across the navigable waterway that's got boats, fisher boats, Navy boats, whatever, coming back and forth, and dragging that pipe 4 miles across the river is a feat in itself. But starting out that morning, excitement was everywhere. We were all set to go. I remember I was asked to go out they had rented a couple of I guess they'd be called tour boats, with an open deck on top and the side. There was a bunch of dignitaries and HRSD people there that wanted to go out and see.
Oh, there was tons of people out for this pipe pull.
Well, but even wanted to see what it was like out by the platform and see this string. So me and a couple of people from Garney went out on the boat with them and were describing and drove around the full pipe string. And at that time, it's just very exciting that this is actually going to happen. And you have all the confidence in the world.
Yep.
And then as things go by, it starts going smooth. Wow, this is really coming good. We might not even need this special pipe pusher that was purchased. This is pulling very easy. And probably about a third of the way through, it started to get a little difficult to pull. The pressure started going up a little bit. And so we decided to start engaging the pipe pusher. And at first it wasn't necessarily clamping on to the pipe. The pipe was kind of sliding through. And one of the things that we had not thought of in all of this planning,
I was hoping you'd tell this story,
is that normally when we do shore approaches and pull pipe in from the water, you're fusing the pipe on land. And only that one day you drag it offshore and around. But this had to be done on barges and left in the water. And so in the water, not only did algae get underneath and start growing or attaching itself to the plastic pipe, but the seagulls really enjoyed this 5,700 foot boardwalk out there for them to be sitting on and doing their business on, we'll say. And the top of it turned completely white over the couple months it took to fuse all this pipe with their...
I remember us up there getting ready for, where I was on land and we was getting ready, and then we had a time was like, well, what's the holdup? What's the holdup? What's the holdup? They're like, they're cleaning the pipe off. They're getting rid of the bird shit. And
well, we desperately we started thinking, this is pretty slippery stuff, this bird poop. And so we got a couple power washers.
Hey, maybe we could make some drilling fluid out of seagull poop. That's next.
That's next. And so we started trying to power wash this off, to pressure wash it. And it was helping, but it had been on there for a couple months, baking in the sun. And it was on there pretty good, and it was pretty hard to get off. And so we were starting to have trouble with the pipe pusher holding on to it. It wanted to slip right through. We weren't getting a good grip. And that's kind of when maybe a little panic first started setting in. Well, shoot, we're only a third of the way across.
I remember.
And this isn't catching. What are we going to do? We need sand. We need to throw some sand on the pipe. Let's go to Home Depot, see how much sandbox sand we can find at the 10 surrounding Home Depots, and bring it all, get it on a boat, get it out to the barges to give it something to grip to, throw it on the pipe. Well, in the meantime, that was happening. One of the Seaward captains had remembered an old trick that he had learned from a crane operator, that a fire extinguisher has talc in it. And he said, well, just try this. Try spraying the fire extinguisher on it. And so they did, and the gripping started right away. The talc was just enough to allow the clamps on the side to hold that pipe, and it started allowing it to be pushed in.
But you know, Greg, that's how this whole industry is built, is trial and error.
Yeah.
Trial and error. That's how we've got to where we're at today. So that's just another story about trial and error.
Yeah. I think the sand would have worked, it probably, but this was a quick solution. So it wasn't long. We were sending every fire extinguisher we could find out there. Yeah, going and buying people out of fire extinguishers. And so it started to push. We weren't having to apply much push to it. It just enough to give it a little push.
Right.
And when you're pulling something that long, it's kind of neat when you're listening on the radio, because I was up on land myself, and you're seeing the drill rod being pulled up onto the drill rig, and you're listening on the radio, and I'm pulling, and you listen, and it's only 10 seconds, 12 seconds, but sometimes it seems half a day.
An eternity.
Yeah. That, okay, no pipes moving out here, no pipes moving. Oh, there the pipes moving. And it would just get a little longer, a little longer. Maybe this one was shorter, but we had, God, I don't know, 4,700 foot at 50, or our drill steel being 3,000 foot long, 170 some joints. Every one of them, I was, come on, it's not going to work this time. Oh no. And so the pipe would end up, because it would stretch a little bit.
Yeah.
But then with the compression, you're putting it on, and it would come back, and everything would start moving smooth. When we started getting, to the last, I don't know, 300-400 feet, you guys were nice enough to, the crews had been working already. Now, this is already the next day.
Right. Because this went all night.
Yeah, this went all night. We started it, again, like I said, about 5 o'clock. And it went all night. I remember, again, hopping on a boat to deliver pizzas about 2 o'clock in the morning out to the guys that were working on the platform and the support barges that were out there. And it was pretty special. But the next day, the sun's already come up. We stayed up all night working. Nobody takes a break during pipe pull. And it's getting
you're committed. When you when you hook onto that drill pipe, you're committed till it's in the ground.
Yeah. And so, shoot, it was probably 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it started really getting a little tight, even with applying more pressure from this pipe pusher. And it just was starting to eat away. Is this really going to work? This is, everything had gone so smooth.
Well, we're into the area that people didn't think could ever happen.
Exactly. We're over that 4,500. We're over the 5,000. Now we're into the area of 5,200, 5,300. Is this pipe going to still work? And even the moment we got it inside the casing, we had 300 foot of casing on the entry side that was down in the ground. And even when the math and the calculation showed that we were inside that casing, that was a pretty big moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it was. Yeah, it was for us too, because it got kind of hairy there for a little while, and we were looking at it, and I was like, man, I know this hole's good, I know the mud's good, everything. I mean, we're in perfect scenarios. If it's, I just felt confident this was coming in, but the pressure was strong. I think I felt more pressure that day than any other day in my career. And I saw it on your face. I saw it on Oscar's face. I saw everybody there was all in on this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it was quite a relief. I know that it was the largest crowd I had ever seen. A lot of times you go to pull pipe and it might be at 3 o'clock in the morning and it's only the drill crew there. The owners might have been there during the day. They just see things. Then it gets to be 5 o'clock. They go home and go to dinner. Yeah, let us know tomorrow morning what happened. No, this one, people stayed. There was a lot of people that stayed there and slept in cars overnight. But the next day, when it was getting close in the last couple hours, I remember there being 3 drones
Oh, yeah.
up in the air, flying around. So everybody came out to entry and just watched that pipe being pulled through that casing, and it was quite an achievement
Oh, yeah. Man,
when you
it was-
actually saw it coming through that pipe,
You know,
coming through the steel pipe, and seeing that pull head bust through. You knew you did it.
Yeah, even when it got to the casing, I was like, no, this is we still got a little ways to go
Yeah,
here.
we still got another 300 foot.
Let's get this in.
It's going to be a pain in the butt
And,
to try to get down to the bottom of this casing if something happens now.
And I've jinxed myself, and every driller's done it, and thought start packing up and everything's good.
Yeah.
And then right at the last second, something happened, and I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen how it affects everybody, and the pressure could not have been any higher that day.
No, it was quite high, and it was probably the proudest moment I've had in the drilling industry.
Well, you deserve it because you sold a job and brought a job to people, and you had the confidence to get it done, and then you had the backing. How did it feel when you got that pipe pulled in? Tell us that feeling you had right then.
At that time, I don't think there was anything better in my career. Everything had all come together, and so it was quite the moment.
Yep.
There were high fives, handshakes, hugs.
Yeah, we're 36 hours, 35 hours.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Into the pool.
Yeah, this was probably 9, 10. It already started getting dark
Yep.
again on the second day.
Yep.
And so everybody's emotions were just spent. You were all running on empty.
Yeah.
But yet the job was done.
Yeah, it was it was great. I don't think I've seen a better moment in this in my time of the industry that I
Yeah.
could recall.
Yeah.
All of our guys were excited. Everybody on the crew was excited. I mean, I never seen so many high fives and guys, just so excited. I mean, even the guys that were the labor hands out there were excited. They had something to carry on to their kids and grandkids, and
They knew they had just completed a world record.
Yep.
And not everybody can say that.
Well, let me ask you this. I got one more question
Yeah.
for you. Is there something you would like to tell new guys, new engineers, new guys that are coming up in the industry, people that may be thinking about getting into this industry? Give them your take on something you would tell a new guy.
Number one, I think that there's always challenges. There's always something new. One of the best things I like about my job is every day starting out, we might have 3 drills going on. We might have 1 drill going on. We might not be drilling that day. But every day is a new challenge. And every day, when you start your day, you have no idea what's going to happen in the next. If you like to do the same thing over and over and over again, horizontal directional drilling isn't your cup of tea.
No, I agree.
If you like a challenge of something new, if you like to be thrown curveballs a lot,
All the time.
This is it for you. And I think it's how you overcome those is what can make you a good name in this industry or not. And I think for younger kids, it's nice to come to some of these conferences and see the students and see them in these technical paper deliveries that are trying to learn and deciding. I know at Huxted, we've had a couple interns that have chose to stick with us, and we've hired them on.
That's great.
After getting their degrees, we've got some very young project managers and engineers that all seem to be very excited. And what we're trying to do is pass on the knowledge that we've gotten over the years onto them and all the things that they're going to learn that we didn't even know of 30 years ago.
That's
I
right.
mean, back when I'd carry around a roll of quarters so I could call the office once a day
Right.
before you had a cell phone. What's going to be like 30 years from now? What are the technologies going to be? And those, if you like things that change often and you like new challenges day in and out, I think it's the perfect opportunity for you.
I agree.
I think back a lot about when I was talked about when we started about designing auto parts, and not just auto parts, but the molds and the presses that make them. Sitting in a cubicle, day after day after day, day after day after day, I at the time thought it would be an easy way to stay home, make some good money. I don't know if my mentality and my energy level, if I would have been happy in life as much as I am now, with all the challenges that we've seen.
Well, Greg, I want to just thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Sitting down, having a talk with us. It's been, it's been a long time since we pulled this in, and I remember Anthony had asked you to have, if you would answer a few questions. You're like, let's do it later. I've got to get some sleep, and that's just where you were that day, because you'd been up for umpteen hours. Like it was a great accomplishment, to say the least.
It was.
And you along with your whole team put it out there and knew what you need to do, and you put all the parts together and made it work. And I just want to congratulate you.
Thank you.
Congratulate Huxted. You guys did a magnificent job, and thank you for sitting down to be a part of. The name of this podcast is One Foot at a Time.
Yeah. And
I think that's the number one common denominator that everybody in this industry has, is our whole careers, even our homes, our vehicles, everything is accomplished 1 foot at a time.
Sure. And that's one of our company creed is reputation, work ethic, and team accomplishment. And I think that just spread out from everybody, just not only be Huxted's team, of our field crew, of the office personnel, of the subcontractors that we hired on the steering, on the mud, but also the team that we were part of to bring this whole project together for HRSD was quite an accomplishment in itself.
Well, you guys did an amazing job, and you guys owe the from me to you, and from the our part of the business. Congratulations, great job on it, and it probably couldn't have been done without you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.